I hope this video finds you well and that you've had a wonderful Christmas period. I have just got about half an hour with nobody in the house, so I thought I would do a quick flick through of my Advent journal because it's now finished. I made this little journal from a video by Jenna Byrne, which I'll link below, and I decided for mine that each week I was going to follow the theme of the Advent candle. So I made 4 little signatures, which just had 2 pieces of paper folded in half, which gave me sort of 3 inside spreads, double spreads, and then a front cover and a back cover, which I've not really done anything on the back covers of them. And I've got 1 each for each week, and each week I had made one of these little prompt pictures with 3 Bible verses on linked to that week's theme, and I pretty much stuck to that throughout Advent, and I just thought I'd share with you what I had done. So week 1 was all about hope, and I didn't necessarily do them in this order. Some of them I jumped around a little bit, but I did start with Isaiah 9:2, which is the people who have walked in darkness have seen a great light. And for this one I started off, I had some collage already on there, and I journaled, and then I added some different sort of dark ink. So I used Payne's Grey and this blue black one that I have as well, and then I just added some collage of a candle and journaled in white to signify light, how Jesus is the light that always burns, and how even in darkness we have hope because of the light of Jesus coming into the world. I actually did this spread last this week, but it's sort of next in my series. This was Hebrews 6:19, where it talks about how we have how hope is like an anchor for the soul, how it keeps us anchored even in troubled times, like an anchor keeps a ship anchored even when the waves are rocky. Our faith gives us hope, which also keeps us anchored. And I didn't have much time to do this one, but as soon as I read that Bible verse, I was reminded of a song by Hillsong called Anchor, and this is the chorus from it. There is hope in the promise of the cross. You gave everything to save the world you love, and this hope is an anchor for my soul. Our God will stand unshakable. So I printed those words off. I'd already put some white gesso onto the page, and then I used some Brusho powders. These are Brusho powders. I haven't actually taken the lids off because what I do with them is make a little hole in the top so you can then sprinkle the powder onto your page, and they're like a pigmented paint, and you can use them in lots of ways. You can use them like paint, so you can add water and they make a paint, or you can sprinkle them onto a page like I've done here and then squirt water onto it, and you get these incredible effects. And some of the powders separate into different colours. I'll maybe do a video on them sometime because they're really fun to use. So I used some sort of blues onto this page, and then I drew an anchor. It was quite a quick page. That's what I really loved about this journal, is some days or some weeks I didn't have much time and I could do a really quick piece of work. So yeah. And then I did this one. Now I'd already done this one before I did that one, and as you can see, some of the Brusho powder did bleed through. Thankfully I'd protected this side with some paper so this didn't get spoiled. But this was based on John 1:1-14, and I in particular really like the Message version, where it says the word became flesh and became flesh and blood and moved into the neighbourhood. And I just love that. And I'd found this gorgeous image of a mother and baby, and I added it to just some collage, and I journaled a little bit as well underneath that, just some thoughts about the fact that Jesus became flesh, that the Word of God became flesh and chose to come and live among us, and how incredible that actually is when you think about it. That was the end of week 1. Then week 2 we moved on to peace. This first one again was quite a quick piece. I'd done some journaling underneath. It was based on Isaiah again, Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord who has compassion on you. So I'd been journaling about God's peace, how, what God's peace looks like, even in difficult times. We're in a period at the moment where for lots of people it's not easy, and I was just thinking about what that might look like for different people, and I just used Neo colours for this, scribbled some mountains, and used some matte gel medium to blend them together, and then added some splatters. It was a really quick page. Then I moved on to this one, which was based on Luke 1:30-33, where the angel appears to Mary. I thought that was going to focus more on Emmanuel, on God with us, of Jesus being God with us, but I ended up focusing on these words, which I've realised this year appear quite a lot in the nativity story. It's funny, isn't it, how you hear a story. I don't know how many times I've heard this story throughout my life, but this year it was these words that really struck me. Do not be afraid. The angel says it to Mary, she says it to Joseph, she says it to the shepherds. So I found this image in a magazine and cut that out, added some wings. The page was already this sort of pinky colour. It was an old scrap piece from doing some gel press printing, so it's just where I've kind of rolled my brayer. But I thought it was really red, and that's not a colour I generally use, so I added some white and some gold, and then this image of the angel and Mary. And I'd again done some journaling underneath, thinking about how we are often afraid, especially when God calls us to do something, how we, sometimes it can be quite scary, but that we are reassured that if God has called us, then he will also equip us, and it was quite reassuring to know that Mary had to be reassured as well. So yeah, that was that page. Then I did this page, which went a little bit off piece, wasn't really linked to a Bible verse that I'd chosen, but I'd gone to a Iona Advent Communion, which is kind of a Celtic reflective communion, and this is the piece that we said: may the peace of Emmanuel, the powerful peace of engaged action, the challenging peace of radical loving, the dynamic peace of imaginative dreaming fill you to overflowing. And those words just really hit me, and I wanted to add them to my journal. And again, this page was actually pretty much done. I'd added some, the brown sort of almost trees. I'd already done that, and this collage here. So I just added some white gesso and the gold and the words. And again, it was quite a quick piece, which is what I needed some weeks. Week 3 was all about joy. And it was really interesting that this was the week where just everything seemed to go wrong. My dad was quite poorly in hospital. We had car issues. At one point we had water coming through the ceiling. We had an electrical socket blow up. It was just not great. And I remember on the Monday walking to work, and it was freezing cold. It was the week when temperatures had plummeted, and I had to walk sort of 30 minutes from dropping my kids off at school to get to the school where I was teaching, and all I could think was, you are not going to steal my joy. And it was a really good reminder actually that, when we know God, our joy doesn't come from circumstances. We're not happy, it's not the same as happiness. We often think it is, but it's not. And we can have joy even in difficult situations because we know God. I think as a consequence to how this week panned out, just the journaling is not what I like. But again, that was a reminder that I'm not doing this to make beautiful pictures. Sometimes they are, but actually it's not about that. It's about the time I've spent with God. And with all 3 of these pieces, even though, they're not sort of beautiful, some of them, it was quality time spent with God, which again is what it's about really. So the first one was this, Luke 2:4-14. And again, I was thinking about, those words, do not be afraid, but how, and how the shepherds responded to the knowledge of Jesus being born. I then did this piece, which I actually did last, and with this one I wasn't really thinking so much about a Bible verse, I was just thinking about the idea of joy, and the fact that joy doesn't come from being happy. It isn't, we don't find joy just when we have good circumstances, but we can find joy all the time by knowing God, and by looking around at what is around us, and at the beauty that we can find. And then the last one was the joy of the Lord is my strength, and I'll be honest, I hate this page. I don't really want to show it. I don't particularly like anything on it, but again, I'd spent a lot of time journaling underneath it all and getting out some of the frustrations and the way I was feeling, and probably that's more important than how the page looks. And then we came to week 4, the final week, which was love, and we had Psalm 59:16, Matthew 2:1-12, and Colossians 3:14. And with this one, I actually started with Matthew, thinking about the wise men. And this page evolved quite a lot. I hadn't initially thought of having this across the middle. I was going to have it sort of spread out, but I ended up with this kind of, I don't know what you call it, this bit going across the middle, and then just the colours either side of it. And I'd again journaled underneath some of my thoughts about the wise men and how they approached Jesus and the gifts that they brought. And yeah, I was just thinking about following the star and how we might follow the star. How do we follow where it leads, or do we, like the wise men, stop and take hold of our own wisdom at some point in our journeys, as the wise men did when they went to see Herod, instead of following the star. So that was my thoughts about whilst I was doing this page. Then I went to this one, which is Colossians 3:14, wear love, it's your basic all-purpose garment. And initially I thought I would have some sort of image of clothing and sort of love written all over it, but then I found this picture in a magazine of some love heart balloons, and I just really I loved how fun they were, how bright they were, and I was doing this page, I was just reflecting on what the world would be like if we all wore love. If we went around with an attitude of love, with love was the first thing we put on in the morning, how different the world would be. And it's not that it's easy, it's sometimes it's really hard to wear love and approach everything and everyone with love, but I guess ultimately that's what we are called to do, because we're called to share the love of God, and their love is for everyone, no matter what, no matter who they are. But it can be tricky, it can be really difficult, and that was kind of what I was reflecting on whilst I was doing this page. And then the last page I did was the Psalm, which is, let me just check, Psalm 59:16, which is, in the morning may I sing of your love, for you are my fortress, my refuge in times of trouble. And as I read it, I was just struck by a song, which you may know, it's called This Is How I Fight My Battles. I think that's what it's called. It might be called Surrounded, not 100%, have to check that. But it has like a refrain bit which says, it may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. And yeah, I was just thinking about how it can feel like we're surrounded by darkness. It can feel like so much bad stuff's happening in the world, and even sort of Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and I made the mistake of checking the news, and there's people have been killed and stabbed, and it felt like, oh gosh, it's Christmas Day, but for some families they're waking up today and they're devastated, and not just the people in the news, but other people I know who've lost family quite recently, or Christmas isn't always this really happy, joyful time. For lots of people it can be quite a devastating time, and so it can feel like we're surrounded by darkness, but actually we're not. The darkness is there, but what is surrounding us is God's love, and that light of God's love beats back that darkness, and that's something that I want to share with people, because it can be really easy to dismiss the Christian message as, oh well, it's fine if everything's okay. But I know from personal experience, actually, even at times that have been really dark and really difficult, knowing that I'm surrounded by God's love is, I guess, what has got me through those times. and it's not necessarily made it any easier, but just knowing that God's love is there, and that it's God's love that is surrounding us, pushing back the darkness, I think is just such an important thing to hold on to. Yeah, so that was my journal. I really enjoyed working in this. I haven't done a journal before where I've used different types of paper. Most of my journals are like this one, where it is just white paper, and I add collage too, which, you know, again, I really enjoy working in. But these ones tend to be more, you know, when I've got something that I'm working through with God, or when I've, you know, read something, I've been doing some Bible study and something's really struck me, I'll often come to these journals. But what I found with this one is this was more of a, you know, responding to something that I'd been given. So because I'd chosen a Bible verse, I was then responding to that Bible verse, and it was a very different way of working to my normal journals. And I did really like the fact that, you know, because I already had these pages that were not plain, it made it a lot easier, especially on days when I didn't have much time. So I was thinking then about how I could take this into the new year, and how I might carry on this idea of, you know, sort of quick journaling, because again, the one I've just shown you, my sort of A5 one that's like that, I will often do those pages over a number of days, or sometimes weeks actually. They can take a while. Whereas these pages, most of them were done, you know, within half an hour to an hour. They didn't take too long to do, which was great to try and fit in when I was really busy. What I have decided to do going into the new year is, so I made myself another journal like that, which again has a mixture of pages, different types of pages. And I also made myself some patchwork pages, and I've been a bit bolder with my paper choice. So I've added some vellum, I've added some that are kind of quite heavily text on them, so that'd be interesting to see how those get used. I added some pockets. What else is in here? Oh, and this one's still drying a little bit, added like a fold out page with an illustration on. And at the moment this has just got 2 signatures in. Yeah, that one's got a doily in as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this journal gets used and how it's different to my other journals. And what I also did was, I quite liked having the idea of the Bible verses, but I also really enjoyed the day that I just focused on the word joy. And so I have, let me find them, this one. So I have cut out some words. There we go. So these are various words. They're from sort of phrases that I printed out, and I've done it for a session that I did in church where we were doing some sort of Bible journaling. So I've got lots of spare ones. And yeah, I just cut out lots of words basically. And the idea is that I will just pick a word and run with that and see how I get on with that, see how see what Bible verse it leads me to, see where it takes me, and that's what I'm taking into the new year as a way of keeping up this sort of not daily journaling, but sort of more regular journaling, where I'm not just relying on the big journals and taking days to do, but sort of being able to just dive in and do a really quick piece when I want to, or when I've got some time, because I already know that this year is going to be, or this coming year is potentially going to be busy. There's things that are going on behind the scenes that I'm not quite at the point of talking about yet, but that you know, if they happen, will mean that things change drastically. And so I want to be able to keep this up and continue to journal even when life is busy. And I think the first thing I'm going to do in here is my word of the year, which I haven't yet decided on. I've done this for about 7 years now, I think, chosen a word for the year. and it's always been really interesting when I've done it, just how significant that word has become. I've often not realised when I've chosen the word that it's, you know, going to be significant, but it often is. So I will be doing that in the next few weeks, and I'll hopefully film a little video when I do that one. But yeah, that's all for now, I guess. Hope you have a wonderful new year too, and thanks for watching this far. See you soon. Goodbye.